segregate the ballots so that even though they counted
Hi,
them,
folks. Seth
they
Leibson
haven't
here.
commingled them
Thanks for
such
watching
that
my
that
monologue.
can't be,
In these uncertain times, you
undone.
may be
So
thinking about
if
personal
we ever get a
protection.
ruling
If
on
you
this
are,
case, we'll
I urge
see.
you to visit my friends at Guns Etc.
We
They'll help
shall
you find the
indeed. In the
perfect
meantime,
protection
I'm
for
getting
yourself
more and more
and your
cynical,
family,
with
and they can
this
even
thing
teach
called
you
the
how to use
Supreme
it.
Court of the
They've been
United
protecting
States. In the
Arizonans for
meantime,
over 33
educate
years,
yourself,
and they stand
read
for the great
incredible
principles
columns
this
at
country was founded
foxnews.com
upon.
and elsewhere
Or you can just
by
click on
Andy McCarthy and his
gunsetcetera.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Welcome back and happy November 9th, 2020. Chuck Schumer said this weekend, quote, "Now we take Georgia and then we take the world." Asked to repeat it, he put his mask on and then said, "Now we take Georgia and then we change America." Close quote. And he raised his fist in the air. It reminded me of this past August when Hillary Clinton said in an interview that on election night, if Donald Trump wins, Joe Biden should not concede. Quote, "Joe Biden should not concede," close quote. And her longtime assistant and political operative, Jennifer Palmieri, swung her fist in the air. Always the fist with the left. It reminded me of this past March when Chuck Schumer spoke at an abortion rally and shouted, quote, "I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions," close quote. Cheers and fists raised everywhere. Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, publicly had to rebuke Schumer for that one. That the fist gets raised when Hillary calls for no concession is the same thing as a zipper on our lips and condemnation when the Trump campaign, seeing irregularities, and instances, if not examples of, if not evidence of fraud, the Democrats prospectively accused him of potentially doing, simply were doing what the Democrats said they would do if they lost, with Jennifer Palmieri's clenched fist jabbing the air. Of course, the idea that irregularities at the polls and with the ballots would ever disfavor Democrats is and was a farce. Note well, not a one favors the Republicans, only Democrats. Meanwhile, the calm and patience Joe Biden asked of the country Thursday ended this weekend. 2 days. Meanwhile, Joe Biden speaks of healing and bringing the country together after declaring victory. At the same time, on the same day anyway, that Joe Biden spoke of healing and reconciliation, Michelle Obama tweeted that, quote, "Let's remember that tens of millions of people voted for the status quo, even when it meant supporting lies, hate, chaos, and division," close quote. How do you have peace and reconciliation and ending of division when you claim over 70 million of your fellow Americans voted on lies, hate, chaos, and division? Remember, that defamation came after Joe Biden claimed victory and called for healing. Will the real Democratic Party raise its hand, please, or throw it in the air? I should ask, will the real Democratic Party raise its fist? Drew Holden put together a collection of Democrats who are seeking a purge of Americans, starting with a former cabinet member for Bill Clinton, Robert Reich. He asked for a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to identify those who supported Trump for future payback. An MSNBC anchor said the exact same thing. Former John McCain campaign manager and Lincoln Project principal Steve Schmidt joined the call to punish law firms and campaign officials who worked for Trump so that they don't get work again in the future. Several American academics and columnists tweeted out the same. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as well, writing that Trump supporters be identified for the future. The history of these commissions, Truth and Reconciliation Commissions, is the history of Nuremberg-type trials for those who supported criminal regimes in Latin America, South Africa, and elsewhere. It's to punish human rights abusers. Leave it to the Democratic left in America, large D, Democratic Party left, to continue to seek purges and treat Republicans like other countries have treated actual fascists. Purge lists were used, most famously, of course, by Joseph Stalin, of course, to punish and imprison dissidents and those who opposed his new regime. I've seen some of this already with law firms where they're pressured by clients and other partners that they dare not represent the President of the United States in these election irregularities. Law firms were once heroic when they defended dissidents, criminals, death penalty cases, but the President of the United States is too much and too far. He's below that status or their status, and people wonder why we worry. When socialists take large parts of the Democratic Party and then they advertise and brag that they want to act like, well, socialists of yesteryear, people wonder why we worry. They should not wonder. If right-wingers like Mitt Romney is going to put blacks in chains, as Joe Biden once said, and he's the head of the Democratic Party now, imagine what they think of those who supported candidates just a little more conservative than Mitt Romney. Well, we don't have to imagine. They told us. We were fascists. We were Hitler. And filled with lies, hate, chaos, and division, in Michelle Obama's phraseology. All the woke claims about anyone who deserves no speech or other constitutional protections. We just don't get them. We don't earn them. We're not Americans. The Constitution doesn't apply to us. Hate. That's the one the woke among us love to throw around. Hate. That's the shibboleth that stands for the justification of silencing conservatives more than any other. It's what they use to say speech can be violence, or words can be weapons. And once words are no longer words, of course, the First Amendment no longer applies. Of course, the riots and statements and use of the F word about the police, the president, and America, that's never characterized by the words hate and division. Only moderates and conservatives can be deemed unworthy of a fair hearing or even a modicum of constitutional protections. Never the left, they never get denied it. You make someone an Untermensch, it's a subhuman, and then you can do to them whatever you like because they represent what the elites believe to be an unenlightened or hateful worldview. A worldview is evidently hate-filled when it supports law over crime, not shoveling billions of dollars to terrorist regimes, creating Middle East peace treaties, protecting the border, giving economic opportunities to minorities in record numbers. Those are the crimes of the Untermensch. And, of course, using the same process Al Gore used in 2000, putting the country through over a month of trials and recounts of a presidential election. The legal process, though, is all of a sudden out of bounds, or should be, evidently, on behalf of Republicans and the Trump campaign. Gore does it, patriotic. Trump does it, scoundrel. I don't know the merits or outcomes of these claims that have been filed, obviously, but it does seem to me that if election integrity is still something we believe in, and that up to a month ago Democrats were speaking of, it's worth a full airing to make sure the election was integral. And if it was, it was. If we lost, we lost. Let us keep in mind, too, we are less than a week from our election last Tuesday. And when it came to the last election, the Democrats, in large part, never conceded. Hillary Clinton always maintained she lost due to fraud, not ballot fraud, but outside Russian interference. As Byron York reminds, on January 6th, 2017, 2 weeks before Donald Trump was inaugurated, Congress met in joint session to certify the results of the Electoral College. It had historically been a ceremonial pro forma event, but several House Democrats tried to block certification of various state results. Representative Barbara Lee objected to certification, quote, on behalf of the millions of Americans, including members of the intelligence community who are horrified by evidence that the Russians interfered in our election, close quote. Evidence that they interfered. And by March of 2017, 2 months into the Trump administration, investigations commenced as to coordination with Russia to alter the 2016 election. How long ago and faded does the name Robert Mueller sound right now? But that's what plagued America and the presidency of Donald Trump for 3 years. So it's a little precious to now hear that questions of shenanigans should not or cannot be investigated before the president is sworn in or certified. What, after all, sounds more credible to you? That Russia and the Trump campaign used Facebook to alter the election of 2016? Or that the unprecedented use of millions of unsolicited mail-in ballots that got counted at 4 a.m. after the election may have produced inequities, to put it no higher? As Byron York put it again, what the Democrats did to Donald Trump's 2016 victory was the longest and most weaponized accusation of election fraud and cheating in the history of America. Bears repeating. What the Democrats did to Donald Trump's 2016 victory was the longest and most weaponized accusation of election fraud and cheating in the history of America. But as we say, if we lost, we lost. But what did we lose if we lost? We lost an election, and we didn't lose the House or the Senate or the state legislatures. And we didn't lose one other really big thing not a lot of people have been talking about, perhaps because they don't want to. Who here had been paying attention to Proposition 16 in California? California, the most liberal state in the country. Proposition 16, if it passed, would have eradicated the Civil Rights Initiative there. It would have put race and gender preference classifications back into law in California, overriding their 1996 decision not to do that. It would have literally reinstituted discrimination based on race in the name of affirmative action. Guess what? It was defeated by over 1 million votes and a 13-point margin in liberal California. It tells me something I'm optimistic about, that we should all be optimistic about. When we have a fair hearing on conservative principles divorced from personalities, we can gain some great victories. Now, why do I say great? Because race norming and re-racializing America is a big part of the Democratic Party. See, for example, that Joe Biden is already slating to restore critical race training sessions in the federal government. But not even Californians want that sort of thing. Only elites do. Voters don't. So maybe it's time to dust off our Barry Goldwater when he implored, "Let's grow up, conservatives." He would say we should put our shoulder to the wheel, go to work, and get ready to win the next time. We can do that, and we should do that. Schumer will help. The progressive wing of the Democratic Party will help. Imposing solutions and policies not even Californians want will help. And I think in time, if we're smart and committed, the country will see there are a lot worse things than a Republican in the White House. Namely, Joe Biden and today's Democratic Party. I'm Seth Leibson. We'll be right back.